Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. We are from Group 4, and today we are going to discuss structuralism and its analysis on poem Go Lovely Rose. Before that, let me introduce our members. The first is Iftinan Rose Putri Safana. The next is Aura Duta Sheva, Ricka Galuh Pratiwi, Dhenisa Reshi Prestia, Muhammad Athallah Naufal, and Wilma Afrilia Rizky. And in this presentation, we are going to explain 5 subtopics. The first is definition, the second is key concept, the third is research questions, the fourth is how to apply, and the last is analysis result. Let's discuss the first one, namely definition. The subtopic covers figure and theory. The first is figure. Ferdinand de Saussure is a linguist who was born on September 26 in 1857 in Swiss. His thoughts are influenced by structuralism and modernism. He introduced modern linguistic studies through his book Introduction to General Linguistics. It contains study of synchronic and diachronic, long and whole differences, significant and significant differences, and syntagmatic and paradigmatic relationship. The next is theory. Structuralism is an understanding which assumes that culture and society have the same and fixed structure. This understanding has developed in various fields. However, there is a shift in the focus of scientists, namely from social structure to linguistic structures. This is called as linguistic turn. Structuralism de Saussure was proposed by Ferdinand de Saussure is that the structure of language or structural linguistics is something important. This is because by understanding the structure of language, one can analyze a text from a particular culture that enables them to find codes and conventions of culture in question. Furthermore, this idea has spawned modern linguistics as the opposite of traditional linguistics. Both of the studies have different bases in which the traditional linguistic analysis is based on philosophy and semantics, while the modern one is based on the structure of the language itself. In its development, there are several linguist figures that use his thoughts, namely as follows. The first is Leonardo Bloomfield. His idea is to analyze and classify elements of language based on its hierarchical relationship by using IC or immediate constituent analysis. And the second figure is Jean Piaget. Jean is a structuralist in in psychology who proposed a concept of adaptation. The concepts are assimilation and accommodation. And the third is Claude Lévi-Strauss. His idea of structuralism is needed in anthropological approach.
Okay, so now I'm gonna talk about key concepts. First, structuralist criticism relates literary text to a larger structure. And second, structuralism focuses on literature as a system of signs in which meaning is constructed within a context. And cultural communities determine the meanings and relationship of signs. Structuralism was found on 3 key concepts by peers for studying the sign system that pervade and determine our life. First, there is iconic signals in which the signifier resemble the item signified. For the example, the stick features on washroom doors that designed man or woman. Second, there is indexes in which the signifier, for example, like fire and smoke, is a trustworthy indication of existences of the signified. The third is genuine symbols, in which the relationship between the signifier and the item signified is a whole arbitrary and customary. Next, there is the main characteristic of structuralist theory. First, a literary work is a type of writing generated by the interaction of many components according to entirely literary rules and code. This aspect within the literary institution produce literary impact without reference to a reality outside the system. Second, in creating a work of literature, the particular author is given no initiative, expressive aim, or design. Instead, the conscious self is announced to be a construct that is itself the result of linguistic conventions regarding the use of pronoun I, and an author's mind is described as an imputed space within which the impersonal system of literary conventional codes and regulation of combination is precipitated into a specific written text. And the third is reader as a conscious, deliberate, and emotional individual is dissolved into the impersonal action of reading. The focus of structuralist critique is on the activity of reading, which produces literary sense. There is endows shape and importance to the series of words, phrases, and sentences that make up a work of literary writing, by bringing into play the necessary norms and protocols. The last, there is structuralist critique use many of the analytic terminology used by conventional critics and rhetoricians of the age, but it does so from a very different perspective. So this means familiar critical concepts such as a word's unity, genre, storyline, narrator, characters, and figure of speech, which were once considered objective features of literary works, are translated into set of prepared responses and expectation generated in a reader by his knowledge of conventions accurate from previous reading, which may be fulfilled during the search of the text.
Hello, I'm Dhenisa. Reshi will explain a short biography of the poet Gold Lovely Rose, Edmund Waller. Waller has a relatively uninteresting youth, but when he comes of age, he becomes thinking rich, becomes a politician, and decides he can get away with whatever he likes and gets interesting. First, he seduces a teenage ward and gets married to her without permission. This is a pretty scandalous thing to do. Also, he had to pay a fine. His wife died 3 years later, so he turned his attention to another teenager and enjoyed a pleasant and passionate spell of naughtiness with her before she married another man. Then, the scandal took on a political nature as he was part of a plot to give the king more powers over parliament. However, he was caught and blabbed about all the other conspirators in order to save his own skin before being banished from the country. So, which of this is relevant to the poem? I think the bit about his relationships, which were always established on the basis of passion and naughtiness rather than through the proper etiquette and expectations of the day. His interest in passion should be fairly obvious in the poem. Now, I will give a summary in Edmund Waller's poem. Gold Lovely Rose by Edmund Waller contains a speaker's instructions to a rose as if it were a person. He hopes to convince the woman he loves to step into the light and be admired. The rose is also instructed to tell her that she should not hide herself from public view, like a rose in a desert, for no one will see and appreciate her beauty. She will eventually waste away and die there, unappreciated. Instead, she should comfort and allow herself to be desired. She need not blush when the speaker admires her. Finally, the rose is to serve as a reminder of the young lady's mortality when it withers and dies not long after she receives it. She will then know that her own life is also short and that she ought to take advantage of the pleasures of life before time steals her youth and sends her to her grave. Next, I will explain about research questions that are generally asked when analyzing literary works using the theory of structuralism. The structuralism theory discusses the intrinsic and extrinsic elements in literary works. So, the most commonly researched question is what are the intrinsic elements in the poem and what are the extrinsic elements in the poem. In the poem Cold Lovely Rose by Edmund Waller, we found several research questions such as what is the theme in the poem, how is the tone in the poem, what figurative language is in the poem, what is the imagery in the poem, and what moral values can be taken.
The first step is to look for repetitions, patterns, echoes, and oppositions of the literary text in people, places, languages, objects, movement, and decisions in real life situation. This is used to find figurative language within the literary text. On top of that, you also need to understand the basic element of poetry, prose, drama, and other literary texts. The second one is to uncover the implication or meanings of the patterns and oppositions by focusing on the relationship of similarity and difference that link the story's events and action. This is also where you look for the metaphorical content in the people, place, language of the object, movement, and decision within the literary text. This is also where you identify the element of, for example, poetry, such as rhyme, mood, theme, rhythm, and etc. The final one is to use your observation above to come up with your claims as to find the text function and structure. So the most useful ability in doing all of this, I think, is interpretation. Interpretation depends heavily on your ability to make connection, and this ability will improve as you read, study, and observe.
So next I'm gonna talk about theme and tone. First, I'm gonna talk about the theme. So the theme in this poem is carpe diem, or in English is a seize of the day. According to Abrams in 1919, the speaker in a Carpe Diem's poem emphasized that life is short and time is fleeting in order to urge his auditor, who is often represented as a virgin reluctant to change her condition, to make the most of present pleasures. A frequent emblem of the brevity of physical beauty and the finality of death is the rose. Next, there is tone. The tone in this poem tends to be romantic, so it can be seen or it is proven in the use of diction related to love. Those are words like love, desired, admired, sweet, and fair. So in this poem, that is proven in the bird her comfort, suffer herself to be desired, and not blush so to be admired.
Next up, we have caesura and unstopped. We found three caesura in this poem. Two of them is initial feminine because the punctuation mark, the comma, before that the syllable is unstressed. That's why it's feminine, just like in the first example, Go Lovely Rose. And the third one, we have medial masculine caesura because die is an stressed syllable and it is located in the middle. That's why it's called medial masculine caesura. For the unstopped, we found four of it in stanza 1, 3, and two of them in stanza 4. The next one is enjambment. We found 5 enjambments on this poem. I'll take the first example. Tell her that waste her time and me. Stop there, that now she knows. You might ask, why is this an enjambment? Because this two line is a one complete thought, but it is divided into two lines without any grammatical pause in between. That's why it is an enjambment. Same goes to the other example. And the next one is there's supposed to be a style here, but I think the style of this poem is lyrical poem because highlight the experience, expression, and emotion from the point of view of the speaker of the poem. The rhythm in this poem, like both the rhythm and the rhyme of this piece, are consistent. The poem follows a rhyming pattern of ABAB. Goal-lovely Rose adheres to structure that is almost entirely iambic. This means that the lines are made out of sets of unstressed and stressed syllables. The short lines of each stanza 1 and 3 contain 4 syllables, or 2 iambs, while the long lines 2, 4, and 5 have 8 syllables, or 4 iambs, for 8 syllables in each. The poem alternates between iambic dimeter and iambic tetrameter. Iambic dimeter is a metric pattern with 2 pairs of syllables per line. The first syllable of each pair is stressed, and the second one is stressed. A pair of syllables within this pattern is called an iamb. An iambic tetrameter is a metric pattern with 4 pairs of syllables per line. All of them are iambs.
I am Aura Duta Sheva. I will explain about rhyme. The rhyme scheme in this poem is ABAB, CD, EF, BG. Go Lovely Rose also use iambic dimeter and iambic tetrameter. The lines are composed of iambic feet, for H. Now let's take a look at the poem. Go Lovely Rose. This is iambic dimeter. Second, tell her that waste her time and me. This is iambic tetrameter.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now let's discuss figurative languages found in poem Go Lovely Rose. The first is personification. The use of personification in this poem is found in Go Lovely Rose. Tell her that wasted her time and me. The whole poem is about the speaker talking to the rose as if it is a human, or the author uses personification to personify the rose. And then the second is in the line of beauty from the light retired. The personification found in the phrase the light retired. It is a personification as the light is described as is retired as it is a human. And then next is repetition. In this poem, there is a repetition of the words sweet and fair, which emphasizes the image of a woman and the similarity she has with roses. It is found in the line, how sweet and fair she seems to be, the 5th line, and then that are so wondrous sweet and fair in the 20th line. The next is metaphor. The writer uses metaphor to compare the rose to the woman he admires or the young lady. He then begins comparing the woman to a rose which he describes as sweet and fair. It is found in the line, when I resemble her, to see how sweet and fair she seems to be. And the interpretation can be, when I resemble her, woman he admires, to see, it refers to rose, because they are both, woman and rose, sweet and fair. And then the next is still about metaphor, found in the line, how sweet and fair she seems to be. It is a metaphor because the subject of the poem indirectly compares his lover to the rose he talks to. The woman is described as sweet and fair, just like the lovely rose. From this, the researcher is also able to find that actually the subject of the poem still does not know the woman he likes very well. And then next, still about metaphor, we found it in the line, how small a part of time they share, they also wondrous sweet and sway. And then the analysis of this line is, it is a metaphor. Here, the subject indirectly compares the life of the beautiful woman to the life of rose, and compare the beauty of woman to the rose by saying, that are so wondrous sweet and fair. Next is about euphemism. It is found in the line, "The common fate of all things rare may read in thee." It is a euphemism because the subject prefers to say the common fate of all things rare may read in thee instead of saying she will experience death like you or the rose. And then next, still about euphemism, found in line and chance to have her grace spied. It is a euphemism because it is because the poet uses the elaborative way of saying something by saying embellishing language to make it or to make the statement more romantic or dramatic. Instead of saying hides from anyone's gaze, the poet says and chance to have her grace spied.
Okay, I would like to explain about the symbol and imagery. The symbol in this poem is the rose. Rose is a symbol of her beauty and his love to his lover. The poet compares her to the rose in order to symbolize that physical beauty is not long-lasting or eternal. The speaker wants to emphasize that they are still young and can love each other passionately, so she should not be wasting time. Okay, the next is imagery. In this poem, there is a visual imagery, as you can see in the line. Small is the word of beauty from the light retired, so beauty is not worth much if it is unseen. And the next is in the line. In desert where no man abide. So this visual imagery is as if we are in desert and don't see man abide. Alright, that's all from us. If you have any question regarding this topic, please don't be hesitate to ask. Thanks for your nice attention and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.